So you've written other books in the past. What was the nexus of this book? And if you could explain not only that, but also what metabolic freedom means to you.
Yeah, this book was written for the masses. It was written for the world. I wrote Keto Flex and which is a keto book. I wrote an intermittent fasting book, a sleep book, a general health book. But I never really took the time to write a book that will take somebody who has really no understanding on any of these concepts that we go deep on to get it, apply it, and change their life. So I wrote it for them. However, for those who are already in this game, doing carnivore keto fasting. It's also written for you because there's different plans in the book depending on where you're at in the spectrum. But I was looking at some of the studies out there, and there were three key studies that really convinced me to write a book on metabolism. The first was a study that came out in 2016. So this is a Mayo Clinic study that I referenced in the book, and the study essentially were set out the researchers to determine how many Americans live an active, healthy lifestyle, and they based it off of four criterias. So the first criteria, Casey, was they don't smoke cigarettes. The second criteria was that they exercise moderate to vigorous exercise for up to 150 minutes at least per week. The third criteria was classified as eating a healthy diet, which in this case was just a minimally processed diet. And the fourth criteria, which was if they're a female, they have a body fat percentage under 30%. And if they're a male, a body fat percentage under 20%. And they concluded with only 2.7% of Americans hitting that criteria of an active, healthy lifestyle. That's it,
My
2.7%,
goodness.
such a small percentage. And then in 2018, the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, well, I'm sure you've had other guests reference this study, but it showed that around 88% of Americans are metabolically unhealthy. And then in 2022, which is a more recent study, shows that it's closer to 93% of Americans being metabolically unhealthy. So we have a big issue here. Metabolic diseases are on the rise. They're linked to so many symptoms. They're the reason why people don't feel well. It's not just the overweight and obesity group, but it's the autoimmune disease, it's the cancer, the heart disease, the high blood pressure, the chronic fatigue, the back pain. These are all related to the metabolism. So it really inspired me to write a book on the metabolism. And you ask, what does it actually mean? What is metabolic freedom? It's living the way God built your body, having a metabolism that's designed to use whatever substrate is available for fuel. So that could be carbohydrates for some people, that could be protein and fat, that could be your own body fat. But when you're metabolically free, you're free from having to count calories. You're free from having to snack every 2 to 3 hours to sustain energy levels. You're free to be able to travel and not worry about where you're going to get your next meal because you're going to get it from your body fat. Like when I travel, I fast and I just burn my own body fat. That is somebody who's metabolically free. Unfortunately, 93% of Americans at the minimum, they're in a metabolic prison. So I wrote the book to guide them into the land of metabolic freedom, which essentially is metabolic flexibility. It's just a different spin on it.
Wow. Well, I don't know. That sounds a bit misinformed. 60 Minutes told me that obesity is genetic and there's nothing I can really do about it besides take medications to get bariatric surgery. So,
Yeah. Isn't that ridiculous, right? Like if that is the case, right? If that's true, then how does this make sense? In 1930, the obesity rates in the US was 1 to 2%. Now Harvard is saying by 2030, in just a few years, it's going to be 50%. Our genetics do not change that fast. But yeah, a quick pill for every ill or get this bariatric surgery, that's not getting to the cause. That's masking the symptoms.
you're saying 60 Minutes is misinformed then?
Yeah, right. So what a
It's so bad.
shocker.
A shocker, I know. It's so bad. It's really bad. I'll look at my Formula One book I have behind me, and it's got pictures of the 60s and 70s, and you see all the entire a spectator section, and everybody is lean, and they've got their shirts off, and they all seem to be fine. So clearly, something is happening around us that is environmental. Before we
Yes.
get into the way you separate the book into identifying the problem and offering solutions, which I think is brilliant and very well done, I want to start even before the introduction and the table of contents and talk about the dedication. Can you tell me who this book is dedicated to and why?
Yeah, you've done a good job with your research and preparation. I love it. I knew you would, as you always do. Yeah, the book's dedicated to my dad, Cyrus Azadi, who unfortunately passed away from a metabolic disease, type 2 diabetes, back in 2014. And I saw him struggle with his type 2 diabetes. I saw him follow the conventional wisdom of taking medication and eating these certain foods they recommended for him. And He ended up suffering a massive stroke, which left him paralyzed for 9 months, and eventually he lost his life. And it was really difficult and challenging to go through that period of time back in 2014. It raised so many questions, and I was angry. I was confused. Why did he have to suffer so much when we did most of what his conventional doctors told us to do for him? And his doctors were never trying to get to the cause. They never discussed that diabetes is a lifestyle disease that can be reversed with lifestyle changes. It was a huge mismatch because their only solution was a medication. And you can't reverse a lifestyle condition with medication. It doesn't match. You reverse a lifestyle condition like type 2 diabetes with lifestyle changes. So it really lit a fire underneath me because I saw him suffer and I went through a lot of pain. And I wanted to make sure that I got the message out to as many people as possible so they don't have to suffer the way that my dad suffered and we suffered watching him go through that difficult time. And that's the amazing thing, though, about these lifestyle conditions. Like, they could be reversed. If you just remove the interference, the body will heal itself. That includes type 2 diabetes, insulin resistance, and in some cases, cancer, autoimmune. The body is miraculous. So I think, that lesson, I had to go through that pain of losing my dad and watching him suffer because it spawned a purpose. I went from a pain to a purpose. And I say in the book, I was given that mountain of losing my dad so I could show the world that the mountain can be moved. So that is why I do what I do. And I know it's why you do what you do, to help people understand that you could heal. Here's how you do it. And hopefully the book helps us accomplish that.
Yeah, it's good that those kind of challenges help fuel what we do later on. I went through the same thing with my mother passing away of cancer when she was 46. So it was already gone after suffering from the disease for over 7 years and all the just terrible treatment she had to go through. It's just so preventable and reversible based on everything that we've known for a very, very long time about things like cancer and chronic diseases as well. So I appreciate you. I know it's a little bit painful, but I appreciate you going there with that. Like I said in the book, you do divide things out. The first section, identifying the problem. The second section, offering some solutions. What ails us? What has happened in our environment that has changed, that has made all of these chronic diseases so much more prevalent around us?
Yeah, exactly. The book is split up with the problems first half, solution second half, and then, all right, how do you implement this with the 30-day plan? And then there's some recipes at the end of the book. Well, it starts with being a sugar burner. That's the first step towards metabolic disease. And there's nothing wrong with burning sugar as a fuel source unless you're only burning sugar as a fuel source. So those 93% of Americans that are metabolically unhealthy, they're sugar burners. They're they're in a keto deficiency. They forgot how to burn fat. When you're stuck burning sugar, it's a metabolic prison. You are snacking every 2 to 3 hours on carbohydrates just to get a short hit of glucose and gives you some short-term energy, and then that drops, and then you have to eat again, and then it drops. It's just a vicious cycle. And meanwhile, you're stripping nitric oxide from your body when you have your blood sugars go up. And nitric oxide is a very important molecule in the body. We know heart disease is the #1 killer in the US. And when you lack nitric oxide, it leads to metabolic diseases like heart disease. So with nitric oxide, when you have high levels of blood sugar, when you're a sugar burner, it strips nitric oxide, which creates vasoconstriction, where your arteries narrow. They close up. And that's not good because then your heart has to pump harder to do the same job, which then leads to high blood pressure. It's not salt that causes high blood pressure. It's being a sugar burner. And all of a sudden, it increases your chances of heart disease because high blood pressure, especially when it's chronically elevated like that, will damage your blood vessels, and then it could lead to heart disease. So we want to stop burning sugar. We want to transition, I should say, from burning sugar to burning fat, because that is the first step. And the insulin piece is really important because in that chapter on being a sugar burner, I talk about insulin and insulin's role here. And insulin, of course, is a hormone in the body that's an energy sensor. It senses energy coming in, and then it'll clear that energy in the form of glucose into your cells. But when it's excess energy, those get cleared away in your body fat, and then it leads to weight gain. But some of the studies in the book that I reference show, Casey, that you could have full-blown insulin resistance, hyperinsulinemia, for on average 6 to 14 years with your blood sugar levels, including your A1C and fasting glucose, being perfectly normal because your pancreas is so busy shouting out, screaming out, producing insulin to clear that excess glucose until those receptor sites for insulin go deaf, and all of a sudden those blood sugars dramatically rise up. And once you're diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, like what happened to my dad, it opens up a whole new world of metabolic diseases that you don't want to be in. Cancer is an increase, heart disease is increased. And as a matter of fact, most people don't even die from type 2 diabetes. It's really rare. It's what type 2 diabetes leads to. It's the heart disease, the cancer, the stroke. Same thing happened to my dad. So it starts with insulin. Insulin is the first domino to fall that triggers a cascade of metabolic disease. So we want to shift from burning sugar as the only fuel source to burning fat and using ketones.